Please rest assured, we will gladly take ownership of the $2 million inheritance and the apartment buildings your father left behind," declared Olivia, my older brother's wife, her joyfulness seeming entirely genuine. Or so I thought as she stood there, smiling in front of my late father's portrait. In that moment, she was the very picture of selfishness, but she was laboring under a profound misunderstanding. Until I could set things right, I had no choice but to endure. There was no way I would let everything my father worked for end up in the clutches of someone like her. My name is Megan. I am a 45-year-old woman and have never been married. "Hey Megan, can you do a final check on that blueprint that's due tomorrow?" "Of course, Dad," I replied. Upon my father's request, I began reviewing the final draft of the blueprint. I've been working at his small architectural firm, covering both clerical duties and design work, since I was young. My interest in architecture and my dream of following in his footsteps drove me to study architecture and design in both high school and university, and I started working full-time at his company right after I graduated. Over the years, we ran the firm together, and my father designated me as its future manager. I had also earned the confidence of our employees. I do have a brother, Greg, who is 5 years older than me and majored in the liberal arts. He shows no interest in design and doesn't seem likely to become involved in managing or operating the company in the future. Because of this, I have never been especially concerned about business succession. Ours is a small company of about 15 employees. My father took it over from my grandfather. My intention has always been to treasure it and help it grow, continuing the legacy from my grandfather's era. That has long been my resolve. Dad, I've finished everything for today. I'll head home and start making dinner. "Thank you, Megan. You did great work," my father said. He generally insisted that everyone leave the office on time unless an exceptional situation arose. By the time it was close to 6 p.m., almost all the staff had gone home, leaving just Dad and me. He often reminded me that a manager must be diligent and avoid complacency. He himself would put in long hours every night. I had respected him for his work ethic for as long as I could remember, but he was 75 that year, no longer in his prime. Part of me wished he would refrain from pushing himself so hard. When I arrived home, the house was dark. My mother had passed away in an accident when I was in my 20s, so now it was just the two of us, my father and me. The moment I flipped on the lights and began preparing dinner, I heard the front door open. "Oh, Megan, so you're here?" It was Olivia's voice, my brother's wife. I wondered why she was dropping by at dinner time. "What brings you here so late?" "I don't have any business with you. Is your dad around?" She sounded completely unfriendly. She had never given me a warm reception, even from before she married Greg. My sister-in-law would say things like, "Don't sponge off your parents and live in such a careless way. Don't come looking to us for help when you're old." In reality, I didn't depend on Dad financially, and I had no intention of seeking support from Greg and Olivia in my later years. It was pointless to argue with her. No matter what I said, it wouldn't get through. Her criticisms continued. "So, you claim not to be dependent, yet you've got your job only because of your father's firm. Who knows what'll happen to you when you're older? You'd better start saving for retirement right now." Listening to her go on, I realized that speaking logically with someone who bore a grudge toward me was futile. I decided it was better to avoid her as much as possible. Greg married for the first time in his 40s, and he and Olivia don't have any children. My sister-in-law once had the audacity to say to me, "You haven't even managed to have one child. People like you are a burden on society." Such words also applied to her technically, but I never voiced that thought. My brother had told me Olivia once suffered an illness that made it impossible for her to conceive. I was careful not to touch that subject, knowing the difference between someone who yearns for a child but cannot have one, and someone who has the choice but decides otherwise. yet I still couldn't fathom what drove Greg to marry her. Back then, there were always question marks dancing over my head whenever I thought about them. I disliked them to the point that even recalling our interactions could irritate me. "So when will your dad come home?" she asked again. "Dad's going to be very late tonight. He said he had to drop by the apartment first," I replied, glancing at the clock with a hint of impatience. "Huh. That apartment, is it?" Olivia murmured with a thin smirk. "The apartment originally belonged to my grandfather, then passed down to my father. Well, in fact, we no longer owned it. Dad still valued it greatly. A precious property my own father entrusted to me," he would say, and often went personally to clean or pull weeds that should have been handled by the property management company. Evidently, the tenants appreciated his efforts. Realizing Dad wouldn't be back soon, Olivia hastily gathered up her bag and began to head out. I wondered what her real motive had been. "Make sure you tell him I came by to see him. Don't forget," she said flatly, then cast a searching glance around our home and left. "Dad, Olivia came by earlier. I'm not sure what she wanted," I told him later. "I have no idea either. She once came by when I was out, sat around without saying much, and then left. Honestly, I'm glad I missed her," Dad replied with a half smile. Neither of us could guess my sister-in-law's real intentions. Dad shrugged, as if to say, "Who knows?" then spoke again. "She's a bit strange, but that's her problem, not ours. Anyway, Megan, dinner was delicious again today. I'm always grateful." "What's gotten into you, Dad?" "That's quite a lot of praise," I teased. He chuckled, looking a bit embarrassed. "You've grown so dependable, Megan. Maybe it's time I retire." "What? Don't be ridiculous. I still have so much to learn from you," I insisted. "Is that so? All right, I guess I'll take a bath and call it a night." "Good night, Megan," Dad said, with a tired sigh as he pushed back his chair after dinner. "Good night, Dad." A week later, he suddenly collapsed at work. At the time, I was in a meeting at a client's office when a coworker called me in a panic. "Megan, something happened to the boss. Please come quickly." My father had been rushed to the hospital unconscious. I dropped everything, wrapped up my work in a rush, and hurried over. I immediately contacted Greg and then Olivia. My brother said he would head there as soon as possible. Olivia, on the other hand, replied, "Do I really need to come?" "You're already there, aren't you, Megan?" I was shocked. Who would respond like that when their father-in-law was in critical condition? But there was no time to argue, so I tried my best to remain composed. "Dad's condition is very serious," I said. "At least come say goodbye. You visited him often, didn't you?" Her blunt answer left me speechless. "Yeah, I was just trying to get on his good side for the inheritance details." I was so stunned that for a moment I couldn't speak. Then my sister-in-law continued, "I'm not good with hospitals, and if there's going to be a funeral, I have to get my hair and nails done. I'm too busy to sit around at a hospital." Her attitude was downright appalling. It was clear her entire being revolved around her own convenience. "Fine," I snapped. "Forget it," I said in a raised voice. I wanted at least to jolt her conscience, but all she did was shrug and say, "Just call me when he's actually dead. I'm busy." Her dismissive tone was the last straw. She was worse than simply unpleasant. Being legally tied to someone like her through family felt unbearable. 2 hours after that conversation, Dad passed away quietly. He was 75 years old. We immediately began the preparations for the wake and funeral. There was no time for the family to grieve properly. Organizing a funeral comes with 1,000 details to arrange. Greg, who was supposed to act as chief mourner, seemed oddly detached. "Megan, did Dad have some chronic condition? It's so sudden. Also, what exactly am I expected to do as the chief mourner? Oh, do I have to give a eulogy? That's such a drag." At 50 years old, Greg's aloof attitude stunned me. But Olivia's response was even worse. Why should I, as the eldest son's wife, have to do anything. I hate dealing with hassle. You handle it, she declared, then vanished to the back somewhere. I had my hands full greeting guests, coordinating with the funeral home, and liaising with Dad's firm. Meanwhile, her apathy was unbearable. Although I could see how it might be inconvenient because Dad was not her own parent, her indifference was still inexcusable. My anger gave way to sorrow. Well, Olivia may have her reasons, Greg said. Megan, could you just take over whatever she's supposed to do? Greg always sided with Olivia. Did he have any idea what hateful things his wife had been telling me? I almost blurted everything out, but realized it would probably be pointless. Greg was ineffectual at best. In the end, I simply ignored them both and pushed on with the tasks I had to handle. Fortunately, other relatives pitched in, and we completed the funeral without trouble. It was on the first 7th day of mourning that many relatives gathered again, sharing stories about Dad. He left us so peacefully. He must feel content now, said Aunt Eliza, Dad's younger sister, who was a spry 60-year-old, 15 years younger than Dad. She was like a big sister to me, someone I could confide in about anything. We were reminiscing when suddenly Olivia strode up to us with the swagger of a villain from some theatrical drama. It felt like any random onlooker would recognize her as the antagonist. Shall we get started? She asked. Started with what? I asked, tilting my head. Inheritance, she announced grandly. My husband is the eldest son, so naturally we'll be taking the $2 million and that apartment. I took a look at the bank books the other day. Aunt Eliza and I exchanged stunned glances. How on earth had she managed to look at the bank book that was locked away deep in the safe? Before we could respond, my sister-in-law arrogantly went on, apparently convinced she was in full control of the discussion. You've got the company, plus this house, right? How greedy can you be? That's already more than enough. Anyway, I'm thinking of raising the rent on the apartment or maybe knocking it down and rebuilding. A higher rental income would make life so much easier. Seriously, your dad left us something valuable. Her loud voice cut through the air, and the entire room fell silent. Then came a small laugh from somewhere. Like a dam breaking, a wave of muffled laughter spread among our relatives. Some bowed their heads, covering their mouths with tissues to hide their amusement. My aunt leaned over to whisper, "Is she serious? Got something to say?" Olivia snarled, folding her arms and glaring at everyone with a lofty stare. My aunt and I could only exchange sheepish looks. Finally, I took a breath and spoke calmly. Olivia, there is no inheritance left for Greg to receive. What are you talking about? She burst out, her confident face twisting in anger. You can't possibly be telling me there's nothing. Are you trying to cheat me? She was still under the impression that everything belonged to my father. I clarified, the apartment is actually my aunt and uncle's, legally transferred a long time ago. My father also took the steps to pass the company on to me, and that was finalized well before his death. There really isn't anything left for Greg to inherit. That can't be, my sister-in-law said, wide-eyed. Greg never mentioned any of this. Don't you dare cut us out without a word. It was all arranged prior to your marriage, I explained patiently. You see, Dad strongly wanted to leave the firm to me because I had been working alongside him for years. At first, I was hesitant, as it was a huge responsibility, but it was his dream to see his own child carry on the business. We did everything officially through a lawyer. The apartment, on the other hand, was a gift Dad gave my aunt and uncle back when my grandfather passed away. The house itself is already registered in my name, and my brother was well aware of all this. He just chose not to mention it. Actually, Dad gave Greg a very large sum as a lifetime gift long before you came along. Greg, as if suddenly reminded of something, spoke up. Oh, right. Dad did give me a huge chunk of money and called it some lifetime gift. I spent it so fast I barely remember. Ha ha ha. I recalled Greg's extravagant lifestyle as a bachelor, multiple overseas trips every year, an obsession with expensive brands, constantly upgrading his car. It made perfect sense that he would have burned through that windfall without a second thought. So the apartment is under Henry's name, Greg murmured. All this time, I assumed it would come to me eventually. Apparently, Greg had passed on this incorrect assumption to Olivia. With no idea of the legal details, she'd been believing she had a claim to the property. Meanwhile, Greg spent almost $1 million of Dad's gift in just a few years. What about the $2 million I saw written in an old bank book? Olivia demanded. That's an outdated company account that's been closed for quite some time, I explained. Did you break into that old safe? Aunt Eliza frowned, shooting Olivia an icy look. If she had forced it open with some slender tool, that was disturbing. My brother mumbled, "Did Dad hate me?" "What?" I replied in astonishment. "Dad only favored you, Megan. He gave me money once, but that's gone. Meanwhile, you have the company, the house. It's just not fair." His remark sounded like that of a sulking child. My aunt stood up. "Greg, don't be ridiculous. You're an adult, aren't you? Do you have any idea how much work Megan put in to take over the company?" she demanded, offended on my behalf. "If you're in financial trouble, it's because you lived beyond your means. Your money dried up because you blew it all. A father can't keep bailing out a child who refuses to act responsibly." Dad himself often lamented Greg's wastefulness. He must have known that leaving his eldest son even more money would be dangerous, so that was probably why Dad made sure to set aside clear legal arrangements. My sister-in-law, however, refused to back down. "You're all conspiring against me. How dare you finalize the inheritance without so much as informing me?" "It was decided before you and Greg married," I repeated. "There's nothing suspicious about this. It was all done in accordance with Dad's wishes." That statement caused Olivia to shriek, her eyes nearly popping out. "I'm not accepting this. I'll sue you if I have to." "But you're not a legal heir," I pointed out, controlling my temper. "You have no standing to claim anything." That only made her explode with anger. She knocked over a precious vase that belonged to my mother, shattered glasses on the table, and made a scene with incoherent shouting. What should have been a memorial gathering for Dad became total chaos. Eventually, Greg and other relatives had to physically restrain her, and the somber get-together limped to a close. "Olivia, I'll be sending you the bill for that vase and those glasses," I told her pointedly. "Wrecking someone else's property is not excusable." "Shut your mouth, you money-hungry vulture," she spat, storming out with Greg trailing behind her. In truth, if anyone was madly obsessed with money, it was Olivia. It was an appalling display of how greed can twist a person's character. That day, I felt I had witnessed the true depths of Olivia's nature. In the end, Greg and Olivia divorced. Surprisingly, Greg, who was usually indecisive, initiated the proceedings. "Seeing how fixated she was on money scared me," he admitted, looking pale. He had little left to his name at that point, and I think he realized what a precarious life he might have had if he stayed with her. Initially, Olivia refused the divorce, saying she was a full-time housewife and had no income. But then a shocking revelation came to light. She actually had a criminal record for marriage fraud. Once our lawyer presented this fact, Olivia quickly agreed to the divorce. Looking back, her irrational obsession with money made sense in the context of her past. I was relieved we'd cut ties with someone who could bring only trouble, but it was hard not to worry about my brother's future choices. He had demonstrated some poor judgment in marrying her. One afternoon at the firm, an employee called out to me, "Megan, boss, you have a visitor." "There's no need to call me boss all of a sudden," I said with a flustered smile. I might have officially taken over as CEO, but I still felt self-conscious about that title. Yet I knew it was a position of tremendous responsibility. and protecting this company and its staff was now my greatest duty. "Oh, but the CEO is indeed our boss," another employee teased with a grin. "Anyway, we're all counting on you every payday." I couldn't help but laugh. "You all really know how to keep things light around here," I told them. In truth, I was happy they accepted me in this role. Deep in my heart, I made a silent vow. "Dad, I promise to safeguard this company. I will uphold the legacy you left for me." With that renewed determination, I handed over my business card, now printed with the words, President and CEO, to the waiting visitor, feeling a surge of gratitude for my father's guidance.